My biggest thing with because I wrestled too when I was in high school and a little bit in college, is cutting weight. I have an issue with it. Like I think it's horrible. It's just I get the original in combat sports. I get why there is like different weight classes because it does make a difference. But man, it's just in my mind, I just think it's catastrophic for your body.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, it's crazy too because there's always the horror stories, right, about things go wrong, and I mean, I think that's the. I mean, in terms of creating eating disorders or disordered eating, I think that's a major player, right, where we have to do these drastic, crazy, extreme things, and then also like you said, like. The majority of people that are in these sports are generally a little bit younger in age, right? So you're talking high school. So you start putting that on like a 16-year-old kid, like, hey, you got to drop 10 pounds in, a week, whatever it might be, right? I mean, they're not educated enough to do it properly. So that's where like the risk comes in, right? So, I mean, in terms of like the weight cutting, yeah, like it's one of those things where, I mean, like I said, I don't come from that fight sport background, so I'm not, I don't maybe understand it perfectly, but, fighting in a weight class a little bit closer to your natural weight, it just seems like that would be a smart solution. And then making sure that you don't have to get into like drastic measures, right? So not waiting till 5 days before and having to try to cut 10, 12 pounds in 5 days. I think, kind of doing like a bit more of like a taper effect where you, again, and it just comes into planning, right? Rather than like, oh God, I got to fight next week and I weigh this amount and I got to be 10 pounds lighter. It's like, starting to plan a month early and being like, okay, I know that I'm at 175 right now. I have to fight at 165. I now have 4 weeks to do this. That gives me, two-ish pounds a week or whatever. And then if I have to do something in terms of like a little bit of dehydration on the last couple days before, then it is what it is. But I think, working with somebody to get a little bit more of a plan that can just help you do that in a less drastic way would be very beneficial to the whole body, right? Because it's just a complete, like, it's just not healthy for the body, right? Like to go through these drastic ups and downs and huge weight loss, and then these, I mean, you see like I guess biographies or whatever, the way some of these MMA athletes do it, and they put themselves through absolute torture for 2 to 3 days before the weigh-in. They can't even get out of the hotel room hardly to get down to the weigh-in. They had people holding them up in the elevator and stuff. It's really kind of sad to see, right? And they're completely dehydrating their bodies of all water, any fluids. But then you figure they have to turn around and fight the next night. So then you go from one extreme straight back to the next extreme, like you kind of said at the beginning there, right? Of like, okay, now I have to rehydrate. I got to put some weight back on. I somehow, after completely destroying my body for 3 to 5 days, I have to fight, in 24 hours. And it just seems, I just can't imagine that, like, I mean, like, there's no way you're at your peak physical performance when you're fighting 24 hours after you just had to get carried down to your weigh-in, So I don't know. For me, I just think that just being a little bit smarter about planning and not having to do it in such a drastic way could make, it would be a world of difference, for a fighter going into their actual event.
Yeah, and luckily, jiu-jitsu is not like MMA. Jiu-jitsu, right. You have to weigh in like right before you. Most organizations, you have to weigh in like right before you fight, because at 24 hours, that's what ends up happening. Everybody does like that extreme cut to be able to bounce back within the 24 hours, where at least in the jiu-jitsu realm, strictly jiu-jitsu, you usually, most of the competitions, you have to weigh in literally right before you compete. Then it goes back to the planning, like you said, because jiu-jitsu doesn't have a season. There's no season. So it's technically year round. And I was talking to an athletic trainer a few days ago, and he was basically saying that the best way to approach the strength training aspect of it is to pick your battles, pick which competitions you're going to do. And then those are the ones that you're concentrating on. Those are the deadlines for your strength regiment. And I'm assuming you're going to do the same thing for your diet regimen, because
Definitely.
you can't maintain a trim diet year round. It's just not realistic.
Yeah, and also I just think performance-wise, you wouldn't want to, right? Like I get exactly where the strength coach is coming from, because you want to kind of periodize things, right? Like you have to have a time where you're working on, more general strength, and then the closer you get to competition time, you specify it more towards sport and away from actual strength and that sort of thing, right? And then obviously your conditioning is gonna be like dependent on fight date and things like that. So yeah, again, nutrition would be the same thing, right? So it would be one of those things where it's like, okay, I know that I have 2 months of, say, my GPP phase where I'm just going to work on getting strong, getting in good shape, getting my weight back up, right? And then as time goes on, the closer you get to the fight, obviously, then the more, and like you said, like you would start to get a little more regimented with the diet. You would start to get on a little bit of a smarter plan, something that's really kind of catered toward the exact goal you're trying to make. But I definitely think that, yeah, in terms of performance, like choosing dates and almost kind of periodizing your training and your eating toward those off periods and on periods would be super beneficial, rather than just trying to be lean all the time, because you would kind of just be spinning your wheels in terms of training. I think you're not going to get a lot stronger, you're not going to get a lot faster, more explosive and stuff, without the caloric intake to promote that, right? So
Yeah, and I'm also noticing too, and I don't know why that is. I'm noticing that the guys that are really super high level black belts, you see them from when they started their career to where they're at now, and they've been slowly like growing in weight. So they'll start at, like, say 170, and now they're like 210. And it's not something that I don't think that they did it like for that particular purpose. It's just what felt right. In other words, as they grew in the sport, obviously they probably grew muscle, they grew conditioning, their body adjusted, their food had to adjust. So for anybody that's watching that, that's on the younger side, just keep in mind that most likely you're going to end up doing like minor changes where you're going to increase in size, because you are getting stronger. If you're doing
absolutely.
jiu-jitsu on a consistent basis, where you are when you're 17 compared to where you are when you're 25, your muscle density is just going to be different. So therefore your calorie intake is going to be requirement is going to be different. So don't be so like, you got to kind of plan that you're most likely going to get stronger, and you're most likely going to need to increase your calories, which goes back to what you were saying, is why you kind of need the do periodization. You need to kind of fluctuate a little bit to see where that range is that feels right for you and your body.